There's a great deal of evidence now that sexual infidelity affects men and women in very different ways. There are reasons for that, and I'll get onto them later. What I want to do is to start off with just a basic backgrounder in terms of how we're driven. As Darwin said a couple of centuries ago now, we're driven primarily to survive and to procreate. If you doubt that, then just look at your life. You go to work presumably to earn money. I don't think most people would go to work if they had a choice. Most jobs are fairly tedious, and generally speaking, we don't like being told what to do. Anyway, so we go to work to earn money so we can afford shelter, food, maybe medical expenses, to establish a kind of status. I mean, it goes further than that. People are looking for power, fame, a whole pile of things. But basically, our drive to survive occupies most of our time. Work, maintaining the house, preparing food, whatever. So hopefully no one would disagree that we're primarily driven by the desire to survive. But we're also driven by the desire to procreate. Now, you may not want kids, but most people have a sex drive. And will go to fairly large lengths, certainly when people are young, in their 20s and 30s, to find suitable sexual partners. Doesn't mean they want kids, but they do want sex. So survival and procreation are basically what your life is about. And it may not be flattering, but that's the kind of brief summary of that. I don't want to go into it in detail. Men typically, in terms of their roles in a relationship, men want to be seen as successful. They want to do that because women, to a large extent, assess a male by his ability to be resourceful and gain resources. So he needs to display that he's successful. I've treated this before, but not the infidelity bit, but this is backgrounding. So, men want to be seen as successful. So, maybe they buy an expensive car to impress people. Or maybe they wear expensive clothes or an expensive watch or something, just to display the fact that they are resourceful and have resources. Women, on the other hand, tend to compete through attractiveness. Typical things are that they very often spend a large amount of time using and applying cosmetics, buying the most flattering clothes and all the rest of it, to attract men. In fact, a woman's her greatest sex appeal is when she's in her early 20s, which is why as women get older they try and reproduce that, maybe plastic surgery or whatever, to try and look younger again, not so much with men. Now, just as a comment on all of that, the survival drive and the procreation drive, all the emotions derive from these drives. So whether it's hatred, envy, love, anger, jealousy, fear, hope, a long list of them, they're all driven by these drivers. And those emotions are very strong. And we're talking specifically here about jealousy. Jealousy comes from, a number of things, but specifically around infidelity. Now, for men and women it's quite different. The whole issue of infidelity is different. Women compete on appearance. So women are, I mean, they may not admit it, but this is all taken from evolutionary psychology, which is more and more gaining ground because, in my opinion at least, it happens to be true. Women compete on appearance, and they will be jealous of, envious of a woman who appears to be more attractive. Hence, beautiful models and all the rest of it in the glossy magazines that women very often aspire to look like. Anyway, they compete on appearance because they want to attract the most resourceful men. Why do they want to do that? Because they want a sustainable and affluent environment in which to raise their kids. They don't want their kids being raised in some environment where there's lack. So they will naturally compete on appearance to try and attract the most resourceful men. Anyway, when it comes to infidelity, women are much less sexually jealous than men. So if a man has been on a one-night stand and the woman finds out, well, yeah, she's not going to be happy about it. But it's not, how can I put it, an existential threat, so to speak. The basic thing about women that makes them different from men is that they know who the mother of a child is, obviously. So they know that their children are their children. But the jealousy factor increases very substantially if the male has shared resources with another female. You know, let's say he's bought her a flat or something, his lover. Then that will create rather more intense feelings in a woman than just a one-night stand or something of that nature. The basic driver here is procreation, and because a mother knows she mothers a particular child, so there's less aggravation around infidelity. With men it's completely different. Men become very jealous of infidelity because all of a sudden they are uncertain, or can become uncertain, as to the nature of their own kids. Were they the father or weren't they the father? Because there's a genetic line involved here. Men want to make sure that they are resourcing and supporting their own genetic line. They're not really all that keen on supporting another genetic line. It's basic biology. So, women get jealous if there's a distribution of resources. Men get jealous if a woman even has a one-night stand with another man, because if she has another child, he won't be completely sure that it's his child. And of course, if they already have children, he's suddenly thinking, well, are those kids mine? He doesn't know. It's a fairly difficult situation for men, because they can never be sure that the kids that they've had are their kids. I mean, yes, you can go for a test on the genetics, but that's even now, a fairly extreme thing to do, because it displays a lack of trust. And the whole nature of relationships is that we're in this together, we should trust each other and so on. I mean, all that really is mainly nonsense, but even so, that's the societal image that we are fed. Anyway, there's lots of evidence for all of this. I mean, multiple surveys and experiments done. Just to give you one example. Men were told, so they were put in an MRI scanner, to see the brain activity. They put in an MRI scanner. Then they were told that their partner had been unfaithful. The thing that lit up immediately was the amygdala, which is the center for anxiety and aggression. Anxious because all of a sudden, I don't know where I am anymore. Are my kids going to be my kids? And aggression because clearly, a man might want to fend off some competing men. On a woman, the brain scan is quite different. So she's told that she's in the brain scanner, she's told that her partner has been unfaithful. And it's an area of the brain called the posterior superior sulcus. And this is concerned with looking forward and considering where something might lead. So, okay, he's been unfaithful, but I'm not all that bothered about that. The amygdala doesn't light up, there's no anxiety or aggression. But then the part of the brain that does light up is thinking, well, where might this lead? Is he giving her resources? Might it threaten the family? And so on. Many surveys, many things measured from South Korea through to the United States, Europe, all the surveys and experiments point to the same thing. The dynamics between men and women are quite different where infidelity is concerned. Just as an interesting thing, women are more likely to reject a stepchild, so a child that comes in from another marriage. I think it's 75% of women will feel not particularly warm towards a child that's coming from another marriage. Why? Because that child is going to be consuming the resources that her children should have. Men less so, interestingly enough. 50% of men are not all that warm towards a child that comes in from another marriage. Why? Well, because they're going to have to support another genetic line, but it's more pronounced with women. The evidence for all of this is overwhelming. There are people who, it does have its detractors, and in an age of woke, there will be a lot of resistance because in the age of woke, gender is supposed to be women are supposed to be like men in many respects, and people don't like the differences, but we have biological differences and we have psychological differences. So there is resistance to this. Whether evolutionary psychology will succeed in the long term, I really don't know, but there's so much evidence that maybe it will. And even the politically correct detractors from it won't be able to destroy it.